Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted, as always, to be joined by Gregory Doyle. This is a rewatch of the first fight between Joyce and Zhang back in March in London. Greg, always enjoy doing these videos with you. We've got a big rematch on our hands in the next couple of days between the big guy from London, the big guy from China. Really looking forward to reviewing the first fight as well as kind of touching on the second fight as well. Thanks for joining me. What are your immediate thoughts of that night in London? I was lucky enough to be ringside. It was kind of a big shock to some people to see not Joyce just lose the fight, but to see him get stops. A lot of people did expect Joyce to win. Your thoughts on that night?
Yeah, pleasure to speak to you, Eliot, as always. It just goes to show that these videos we do are very raw. I didn't know that you were at Joyce, Zhang. I'm like, oh, cool. I didn't really, I can imagine that would have been a good eye opener. You're probably the expert going into the rematch with what you think may happen. But the thing that stood out for me that night, Eliot, is that Joyce will struggle to bully a guy that's bigger than him and is quite an active puncher. So I think that was the learning for me that night. But it was an action-packed fight, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But I think that Joyce has got his work cut out in the rematch, if I'm being honest, Eliot.
Yeah, no, it was one of those atmospheres that just went very, very quiet very quickly when I think 1 round in, 2 rounds in, there was an understanding that this was not going to be an easy night for Joyce, and then pretty much lost every round, and then kind of forced a stoppage in the 6th round. I know, as always, we're going to touch over 3 key points that happened in the first fight. We're not going to kind of drag this video out too long, but first point is the first round, isn't it? I'll let you take it away, but yeah, that first round, it was really an eye-opener. Well, yeah, no pun intended. This was going to be a very tough night for Joyce. I'll let you take it away with what you noticed in that first round, Greg.
Yeah, Eliot, it just the tone was set in the first round. I'll be honest, it's not a fight I watched back too much, Eliot. But when we're going to do these videos, I do like to go back and study the fight a bit and see where I can pick up on, because not only does it let us review and talk about key moments in the fight, but it gives you an idea how the rematch might go, because it's shown like a pattern. And on that word pattern, that will take me to my first point. If you notice, it's round about halfway through the first round, Eliot, when an orthodox fighter fights a southpaw and vice versa, the backhand is always the shot that gives that fighter trouble. I don't know why it is. I'm sure if there's people who have previously been amateur boxers, professional boxers, if they're watching this video, they'll agree with me. For example, me being an orthodox, you're always told if you're fighting a southpaw, target the right hand. With Zhang being a southpaw, he targeted the left hand. And halfway through round 1, Eliot, he just started landing this pinging left hand at will. And I could not believe that Joyce didn't adapt to it throughout the fight. It just was completely at will, and it just totally set the tone of the fight going forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was just... It felt like Zhang couldn't miss with that shot again and again, and it was worrying how little Joyce could do about it. Joyce, he's always been criticised for like a lack of movement and being a bit slow, but being there, it was a frustrating watch for him, because you just thought he's the younger guy, but I just think his lack of agility, I would say, would be the attribute I would kind of focus on the most here. Wasn't ideal for this fight. Moving on to round 2, Greg, and we saw Joyce get rocked for quite possibly the first time in his career. One of his main strengths is this kind of iron chin he's known for. He's been in the ring with some decent punchers. Obviously never lost, but he's never looked to be in trouble. He's kind of got this thing where he will get hit and then just continue to walk forward and hunt you down. Look, he maybe not the biggest puncher in the world, but if you can cast your mind back to that Joseph Parker fight, took a lot of shots in that fight, but came out of the ring and didn't really look like he'd been in any sort of fight, to be honest with you. So, however, that wasn't the case in this fight. Your memories of round two, please, and Joyce stumbling.
Yeah, I think we'll agree. Round one, we seen a little bit of a very, very slight stagger in Joyce after that left hand, and it showed probably that Zhang could hit him. But round two definitely showed that, Elliot. And surprise, surprise, it was the left hand that got him and hurt him in round two as well. I've never seen Joe Joyce properly hurt that way. The punch staggered him at first, but then when the referee broke the action up a little bit, Joyce staggered back to the corner and he turned side on to Zhang. Normally you question me on these videos, but I've actually got a question for you, just something I'm really interested in. Elliot, as I watched the fight on the television, it looked as though Zhang was a decent puncher. What was it like in person, seeing that? Did it give off the same impression? Did you hear the sound of the shots or anything? Was it any different being there in person?
Yeah, absolutely. You could tell that Joyce didn't look comfortable whenever he was hit by Zhang, and it
Yeah,
also Zhang's ability to follow up was surprising to me. I expected Zhang to maybe throw a couple of punches and then to basically need to take some sort of breather and just to take a step back. But his Zhang's work rate surprised me in this fight. And yeah, he looked like, look, he's not Deontay Wilder in there. He wasn't going to knock Joe Joyce out with one punch. But no, he's a big guy and he can clearly punch quite a bit. And look, if you look at his punching record, that should have kind of been respected. If you look at something, maybe he's not knocked out anyone special, but the guy can really punch, and we've seen that in his previous performances. So yeah, in answer to your question, yeah, but he really could punch, and he was in those first couple of rounds. He made Joyce look really uncomfortable.
yeah, yeah. Interesting stuff. It was something I really wanted to ask you because you'll know yourself. Sometimes these punches can look a certain way in television, and then they can look a different way in person. And you could hear the sound of the gloves connecting. And I was just thinking, I wonder what that sounded like in person. Glad
Yeah,
I wasn't in there that night, Eliot. That's all I could say.
yeah, it was a unique sort of fight in the way that what the expectation was compared to what actually happened in there. We're going to fast forward to round five, which is near the end of the fight.
Yeah,
By which point Joyce looks like he's in more and more trouble. There was more panic, maybe people watching that fight, and Zhang was very quickly turning into the favourite, and it looked like he was going to win.
yeah.
Having more success as the rounds went on. What
Yeah.
were your thoughts as we went into round five, Greg, and Joyce's eye looked worse and worse? What was going through your mind in terms of what was going to happen here and what the outcome was going to be?
Quite a few things, Elliot. First thing that I remember looking back at round five, Richie Woodhall, I think he said he thought that was Joyce's best round because he was more active in the round.
Mm.
But Zhang was still landing and he still looked like the boss in there. Two things that were going through my mind is this is surely a matter of time before this fight gets stopped, whether it be Joyce gets hurt or the eye closing, etc. But I also, because he wasn't massively rocked again in the fight, Joyce, it did go through my mind that if the corner can hold this eye up, does he go on to be strong in the second half of the fight and this fight changes around? It's an answer that we'll never know because the inevitable happened in round six. But I do remember my main thought at the end of round five, when he went back to the corner, and I just thought the eye's getting worse and worse, and it's only going to get worse. So I think at that point, I kind of knew it was a matter of time before the referee or the doctor stepped in, which they did in the end.
Yeah, and obviously, it was just the fight was then stopped in round six. I don't think there weren't many complaints at the time about the fight being stopped, even from Joyce himself. There was no protest from Joyce, so I don't really feel like we need to have that discussion of whether it should have been stopped or not. His eye was in a bad state, and if that fight continued, I don't think we'd be seeing this rematch. To be honest, if that fight had gone another 2 or 3 rounds, it could have ends up being very dangerous. Been great to review this one with you, Greg. It was just, yeah, it was a real unique fight, and I don't want to sound kind of cheesy about this, but at the moment, you're not seeing these top heavyweight guys fight each other very much. So I think a lot of people need to kind of appreciate a fight like this, that it's happening. If you consider Joshua Wilder looks doubtful, Tyson Fury's fighting Francis Ngannou, Usyk's just having the one fight this year, which was against Daniel Dubois. Appreciate that we are seeing two top 15, maybe even top 10 heavyweights fight each other twice this year, and we'll see what happens. I do want to ask you, Greg, first question I'll ask is in a nutshell, what does Joe Joyce need to do here?
Oh, it's a good question, Elliot, because I don't like to disagree with Richie Whittle because I think he's a very, very intelligent and very good pundit. There's very little that Richie Whittle says that I don't agree with. I have finally found something that I don't think I agree with, but Richie Whittle, I can understand where he was coming from. He said that he thought that Joyce should maybe ping Zhang, stay out of range, be in and out for a few rounds. Joyce hasn't got the head movement to do that. He doesn't. He's not bad on his feet moving around, but he struggles to get out of the way of shots. If I'm Joyce, I stay close to Zhang in the rematch and work inside because you're effectively taking away Zhang's best shot, which is a straight left hand. He needs distance to throw that shot, Elliot. If you stay close, you're not giving him that distance for a start. And Joyce is much better on the inside than what Zhang is. So I think he needs to make it a bit of an ugly fight in the rematch and stay in close for Zhang. And history's told us that Zhang would tire first. So yeah, I think that's the tactics I go down. Stay tight and work inside and try and tire Zhang out as the rounds go on.
Yeah, definitely. I think we can't forget that what Zhang looked like at the end of the Jerry Forrest fight, at the end of the Hrgovic fight, looked completely exhausted. So that Joyce has really got to take that into consideration. Joyce will be 38 by the time this rematch happens, Greg. Has been accused of maybe being a bit one-dimensional in his career. How much belief do you have that he can make the adjustments he needs to and beat Zhang? How much for chance do you give him? Do you think he can do it?
Because of the way the fight ended, it leaves that big unknown. Elliot, I'm going to be honest. I watched the first 4 rounds of that fight today, and I thought, how does Joyce beat him in a rematch? It's just not going to happen. He did come back into it a little bit in round 6. Zhang, I don't know if he took 5 and 6 off just a little bit and slowed himself down to pace himself. But I think that Joyce has a chance of winning the fight. I truly, truly do. But he's going to need to work Zhang and he's going to need to take his best shots, not let his eye get swollen and come on strong in the second half of the fight. If he can do that, I definitely think he can stop Zhang in the rematch. But it's very difficult to see by a repeat and a Zhang victory for me so far.
Yeah. I tend to agree with you, but we'll see. I think this fight might not be for everyone, but I think it's a very interesting rematch, and I'm really looking forward to it. Greg, thank you for joining me. Looking forward to the big rematch between Zhilei Zhang and Joe Joyce on September the 23rd on TNT Sports. I will speak to you again very soon.